Let's talk about the DX Fleet Scheduler. The DX Fleet Scheduler can be found under Reports Scheduler. The scheduler allows you to run some of the tasks that you could do within the DX Fleet user interface through an automated schedule. So to do that, you first need to create an event. So you hit the plus. You're going to give your scheduled event name like daily report. We're going to select the event type. But here we got to define if we're going to use an export or a report. There's also an additional export TRN option here for the TRN format. So in this case, we're going to run an export data. This is similar to the export data that you could do within the application right here. Also, the report option is the same as what you could run here on the Power BI report. So here we're just scheduling that for the future. So we're going to select export data. We're going to go ahead and select the email of contact that we wish to receive the report. Now, this is based on the contact list that's configured here. So you'll want to go ahead and go settings, set up contacts, and create a couple contacts before you do this process so that those contacts will be here and ready for you to go ahead and select them when you are creating your scheduled event. So I'm going to go ahead and select my email here. And if you wanted multiple, you can select multiple. And all of these recipients will receive the scheduled report. Now we have a couple options on what the date range is that we're going to run the report. Now, if we only wanted to run from one start date to one end date, we could do a standard date. So we would be able to define, I want transactions from this time to this time, and you could select the date and the time to run those. So if I wanted the last month, I can come in here and select that. And the start time I would pick would be, 12 a.m. to say 11:59 p.m. And that would give me everything for the month of October in this report. Now, if I wanted to do that, I could just do that on the transaction export page. Now, where this might come in handy for an export is if I wanted to run, say, a report for the entire year on New Year's or something like that. Or if I wanted to run a quarterly report at the end of the quarter, the beginning of the new quarter, I could set those ranges and say, I would like to run this in the future so that I don't have to go in here and manually configure them or manually run that report on that day. However, DX Fleet has a better solution for those kind of situations, and that is a relative date. The relative date will allow you to say, I want yesterday's transaction. I want the last 3 months transactions. I want the last 30 days transactions. And that way, you don't have to set a start and an end. It's going to fluctuate based on that relative selection that you have. So if you want to run it once in the future, standard date. If you want to run multiple times on a reoccurring amount, instead of being able to, having to set a date, you would set a relative date. So we're going to select a range. And here you could say, I want last week's transaction, or I want yesterday's. I think yesterday is probably the most common, but last month is also a common one. So we're going to select yesterday. And then when we run this, it's going to give us for yesterday. If I run it tomorrow, it'll give me today. If I run it the day after tomorrow, it'll give me tomorrow's. So it's going to change those times based on your relative selection on that date. Here, we're going to fill out the regular stuff that we would fill out. We do the export data, and you can see the tutorial on the export data here if you need more information on how to fill this out. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop in what I need for mine. Yours may be different. Your selections may be different. But here I'm going to say, I want all of my sites. I want all of my accounts. I want all the network transactions, and I want to export everything to Excel. And that's basically what I'm selecting here. If we were going to do a report, you would basically do the same thing, but you would define what report do you want to run. I want to run a network transactions by site report, or I want to run, a activity detail report by driver. And basically you're just selecting the type of report that you would like. So let's go ahead and if you're doing a report, you also have this extra definition of the form for the report. Do you want an Excel, CSV, or PDF? I typically do PDF for the report. And so you're going to select whatever report, whatever export you want, and then your relative date. And if you're selecting a report that needs by driver, you could select your driver that you want the report. If you're selecting a report by account, by account, then you would select your account. These are basic things that you would select if you're running the report regularly. If you're running the report regularly, you just have to basically fill out the same thing. So if you need more information on how to run a report, we'll go over that in the report. But basically, you're going to select your report, you're going to select your accounts, and then you're going to come down here to the bottom. Here's where we set how frequent do we want this to run, and do we want it to reoccur on its own. So here, if we do schedule once, this is going to run one time, and it's never going to run again, and you would set the time. So if I wanted to run a report for last year, I could come in here and say on January 1st of next year at, let's say, 6 o'clock in the morning, I would like to run last year's report. And I could set this to a standard date of the entire year of this year. And then when it hits the new year, I'll get this report. And so that's one way you could do it to kind of automate. Or if you wanted to do a relative date, which, I typically recommend unless you have some sort of specific need for, something to run in the future, we would come over here to reoccurring. So there's a time zone. So if somebody's configuring this for you in support or a distributor and they just happen to be in a different time zone, this is important so that it runs when you actually want it to run instead of whenever the person who configured wanted it to run. So if I configured it in Central Time, but you're in Eastern Time, it's going to be delivered Central Time based on the selection. So we've added this to kind of improve those situational things if somebody's helping you over the phone or through the OPW support channel or the global support channel to make sure that we select the correct time zone. And then down here, we're going to select reoccurring instead of once in the future. We're going to hit reoccurring, and now we have to select the interval. So the interval, how often do we want to run? Well, if we're going to go up here and we're going to do a relative date of yesterday, then it makes sense to run it every day. So we're going to do that. We're going to say days. We're going to select every 1 day. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to get a report every day for yesterday. And we could tell it when we want that to start. So you need to be in the future. So you can't set it to start yesterday. You have to set it for tomorrow, for example, or later today. So I would select tomorrow. I would select the time that I want it to run. This is the execution time when it's going to run the report. So if I want it delivered to me early in the morning before I show up to work, then I would do something like this. If I want it to be like at midnight, you got to be careful with something like that. If I do 12 o'clock a.m., all of the transactions from that exact minute may not process in time for that report. Sometimes the reports, they sync to DXFleet, but they may take an hour or two before they show up on the report. So you don't want to run it for the exact time that the report is going to run and the transactions are going to be at the end of that report, because they may not make it into the report before your thing runs. So I would always suggest running it sometime a few hours after the last date on the report, just to be on the safe side to make sure you're capturing all the transaction data. So I would do something like 6 a.m., 4 a.m., or, maybe you want it right when you come in at 8 or 9, So whenever is fine. But this is going to need to be in the future, and this is going to be the time that it runs. So the way we have it configured now, we're going to get yesterday's report every day, and it's going to keep going forever until we stop it. So we could delete it as a scheduled task, or we could set an until day where we say, I want this to run until, December, and then maybe we're shutting down. I don't need that report anymore. You could set it in date by checking method, putting it in date. And then you're basically going to save it. Once you save it, it's going to create an event. That event's going to start triggering at this start date and start time that we've selected here. And then that will be your scheduled report, and it will continue to run. I'm going to cancel this. I don't really need to save it. And we're going to go look at some of the scheduled events that we already have configured here. So let me refresh. Might have got signed out. All right. Okay, so we're going to go to the scheduler, and you'll see that when you have a scheduled event, you're going to see if it was successfully run and when did it run last. So this one was a report for the last 7 days, and it was set up in September and it ran in September. And so that was it. It's never going to run again because it's not a relative date report. We could just delete it because we don't need it anymore. So you could just simply hit delete here. Now, some of these other ones, if they were set to run, so this one is a test report. It's running every day because it ran today at 6 a.m., similar to what we have configured. If I wanted to stop that, I could delete it here and it would stop it. If I want to make a change to it, there is an edit scheduler option. What this is for is really so you can see some of the selections that you have, but you'll notice things are grayed out. We don't support editing the scheduled events in the edit button. The edit button is more of a view the current selection option. So you can't come in here and redefine the already defined scheduled event. It's better to come into the report scheduler, delete the old one, create a new one. That way you could define it with all the right things. You'll have issues if you come in here and you edit it and say somebody that was a contact is no longer a contact, what they were in there from before, you might run into problems. So we don't really recommend doing the edit here unless you just want to see what was defined before, what the report it was or when it was set to run, those kind of things. If you want to add somebody to the report, it's better just create a new report and add the right people. That way you don't run into problems. But that's as simple as it is. You just go in here, you define the report, the export, the time, the relative date, and when you would like it to start. And then once it starts, you should start seeing this date show up. It'll say that there's nothing there the first time you create it because it hasn't run yet. But when it hits the time to start running, you'll be able to see the last execution date. And it should be for that time that you configured it for. Now, I mentioned the email and the contacts. This will email a link to the report. If the report is a small report and it's less than 10 megabytes, then it will email you the file itself. So it depends on how big the report is. If it's big enough or small enough really to put in an email, then you'll get a downloadable link in your inbox. If you get a report that's bigger and it won't fit an email, then it'll give you a link. You simply just need to click on that link or you paste that link into your browser, and then it'll download to your browser, download just like anything else that you would download from the internet. So just keep that in mind. If you send it to multiple people will get the same thing. The reports link in your inbox will expire. I think it expires in like 48 hours or something after it run. So it won't stay there indefinitely. If you need to run it again, I would just recommend it into the report page and just running it from the report page. That's the quickest and easiest way to do it is just go to reports, run the report again, go to the export, run the export again. If you need to find something that ran already in the past, then it's just easier to do that manually than trying to go and edit the event or something along those lines. So just keep that in mind. If you have any questions on this, support can definitely help you out. If you have any issues with a report not running, or if it never executed, maybe you put in the wrong time or the wrong start date, I would just create a new one and start over and try. If you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out. But that's how you would schedule a report or an export to be emailed to you.